all know. And it's especially hard when you don't have those, dirty, poor people in tattered clothing with the pens and the keyboards and the laptops, toiling away in those, mines that they, call writers' rooms, because they are on strike right now. And this is something we haven't seen since 2007. So yeah, like what is causing this, and what is precipitating? Not only precipitating it, but ultimately probably going to drive it to its inevitable conclusion. But why is this happening?
Yeah, so after about 6 weeks of talks, the WGA decided to go on strike. And this is about 20,000 people that work in the television and film industry. And what they want it boils down to, they want Hollywood to swear off using AI to write scripts or to punch up scripts. They want better pay and better residuals. And then they also want a guaranteed number of writers on television shows based on how many episodes that show is. Essentially, the more episodes a season of TV is, the more writers get, tacked on to the show.
Okay.
And that's kind of what it boils down to. Those are the three, main points. There's a couple smaller things, but those are the big ones.
Okay. That's interesting, because that ultimately kind of sets what the budget of a TV show can be. When you get down to it, because the writers are going to eat up so much of a percentage of it, more than they used to. And yeah, like what kind of, how, I don't know, but hey, buddy boy.
Well, I mean, I think that
you take it away for a second.
It's funny because I think you flashed it up on the screen a bit, but the WGA has been very, very transparent with their dealings with it's called the AMPTP, is the organization of producers that they're sort of rallying against. And they've been very transparent about their dealings with them. And it's pretty funny to look at their minutes from their meetings, and what you see on almost every single thing is, this is what we asked for as the WGA. And then over in the AMPTP category, it says, rejected our offer, did not propose a counter. And it's just on half of the things they asked for. And the AMPTP is using almost like these Amazon-like or Starbucks-like union busting tactics, just flat out ignoring and refusing to talk about certain things, or threatening people's jobs. Now they just yesterday, actually, a bunch of the companies involved with this, including Disney and Paramount, sent out mass emails to all of their writers, basically saying yeah, you can't write, but you better be on set to do all this other stuff. We're gonna put you to work still. We can't make you write, but we can make you go get the director's coffee, or we can make you go get, and it's nuts.
Oh
because
God,
they're
degrading as fuck.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. I just added it to our doc yesterday, and it's basically they're basically saying, if you don't come in and do this, these menial jobs, then we're gonna fire you, and then we don't give a fuck if you're on strike because you've already been fired. And so it's pretty crazy.
It's pretty despicable too, when you get down to it, when you think about how much fucking money is being spent on all the content that these people are writing on, and just how little work there ultimately is when you get down to it. Because there's only so many writers who can be in a room. There's only so much credit they can even get for the work that they do. There's already so many gates and gatekeeps and arbitrary ceilings put on the various stages of how you make money in this line of work. And you have people like that dude on The Bear, who's making so little money that he's negative while he's at an awards show that he wins an award at for the show he works on. And he's been pretty vocal in there. What did you think of Adam Conover I know he's kind of a little douchey boy. I'll just call him that. I don't really like his content, but it took some fucking cojones to go on David Zaslav's news network and basically call him out for how much money that man gets paid. $250 million a year, and maybe he deserves it because he saved Warner Brothers Discovery so much fucking money. But yeah, I don't know. Not a good look when you consider how what that would mean for the 10,000 writers in the guild. That's only $20,000 a piece, and that's all going to one dude. I don't know. It was I'm not a leftist by any means, but that was an interesting classist perspective when you look at the industry from the working man writer, like the guy on The Bear, and David Zaslav, who lords over the marketplace that the network that broadcasts the show belongs to.
His comments are interesting, and it's funny how there have been kind of like these sort of figureheads that have emerged from this strike, like him and Rob Lowe was out there like picketing with them, and Rob Lowe was like doing all these like TikToks and Instagram stories, and he was getting out there. And there's this woman, I wish I could remember her name, but she's a writer from Cartoon Network, and she just flat out came out and said, like, I don't think you people realize how dire this is. And she basically laid out how like shitty things are right now within, in the internal Cartoon Network, and how like that network is on the verge of just being completely like done.
Wow.
Like completely, like Zaslav is ready to just hit the red button and just nuke it from the earth. And so all these sort of figureheads have emerged, and that's sort of interesting. It's pretty crazy. And I would encourage anybody to just go and look at what the WGA is saying on their various social media accounts, because as we sort of transition here to talking about what happened the last time this went on. The last time there was a 100-day strike. That's how long it lasted in 2007, and a lot of people will remember that. And so when it's important to look back and remember what happened and what could possibly happen now. And so what do you remember about that, the 2007 writers' strike?
The show I associate most with the consequences of that strike is Heroes. The first season of that show was transcendent. It was as hot as like Lost ever was. It was like what appointment, television on a major network was all about, as far as that era goes. And it was at its peak. Season 2 was cooking. They had a time travel narrative going on. It was crazy. And then the writer's strike happened, and they literally just went, oh, all of that didn't happen. They just had to abandon whatever the fuck it was they were doing in that period of the show, and it completely derailed any chance that show had of succeeding, because they had to spend the next 2 seasons and the reboot trying to make up for how much the writer's strike fucked up their plans. But they weren't alone. There was a lot. There was I think you mentioned the document Quantum of Solace, being so slapped together that movie. The one time I watched it, I walked out of it and I was like, that was a commercial. It was just a James Bond lookbook for marketing, for the movie. We didn't get the movie itself. And I don't know, what do you associate? What do you remember specifically from the goings on, or what even made it happen back then?
Yeah, well, what I remember was one of the bigger ones was, I don't know if you've seen Friday Night Lights, but the second season of Friday Night Lights is notorious for having a storyline, a subplot where Landry, one of the show's main characters, literally murders a guy in a show about high school football, and he literally kills somebody, and then that season of the show is about him trying to cover it up, and it's awful. And so that was a part of the writer's strike. And I mean, if people don't know, essentially the reason why this stuff happens is because while the writers are on strike, they can't work on a film or TV show in any fashion when it comes to writing. So they are not able to write a single word. They aren't able to contribute a single word, and they aren't able to do rewrites. So studios are then left working with scripts that have already been completed, or that they dig up from their like script graveyard, or they have non-writers writing these shows and movies. As you already stated, with Quantum of Solace, Daniel Craig was literally on set writing his own dialogue, and then you had movies like I mean, that was a notorious summer for shitty blockbusters, because you had Transformers 2, you had Terminator Salvation, Dragon Ball Evolution, just the worst of the worst franchise shit, and it was because of this writer strike.
Wow. See, I completely forgot about that Landry storyline. But
Yeah, it's so awful.
so I just want to ask you, like, aren't these writers opening themselves up to just be replaced by the thing they're asking studios not to use? Like
The AI?
AI, yeah. Isn't that like, aren't they basically inviting their usage? Because like, oh, we don't have an actual writer on the set, but we have every draft available to us, and we can just tell the algorithm to take all of that information and then give us a script that fits all these parameters we want, or just fine tune the scene we're working on today. Like they are like, it's like, I can see why they're very fucking paranoid about it, because it seems like exactly what a cynical producer would do to just get to the easiest route logistically to a produced daily that they can incorporate into the whole at some point, because that's all that they're looking for. Which is why, like, what is it, Rings of Power, and is it another Amazon show or it's House of the Dragon? They are continuing like without their showrunners, and is that gonna harm those shows? Or like what if we find out someday that, oh yeah, part of House of the Dragon that season was done by ChatGPT, and that episode will have a reference acknowledging it? Like is that inevitable, or like is there covenants blocking them from doing that presently?
Well, right now, the only safeguard, and it's not even really a safeguard, but the only thing that the WGA and the AMPTP have in place regarding AI is the AMPTP has agreed to meet with the WGA once a year to talk about it. And that's it. They'll get together in a room with the WGA, and they'll once a year, and they'll say, here's how much AI has it advanced, and that's pretty much it. So there's nothing stopping the studios right now from looking into AI. And so, yes, I think that's a distinct possibility, what you were talking about. But I guess at this point, I think like the government would have to step in regarding that stuff if they wanted to, because the thing about having something like AI write your programming is AI can't really be credited, because AI is pulling all of its resources from other things, the internet, all of the published works of human history, AI is pulling from in order to write what it is writing. And so I don't know, that's kind of the question, I think.
And just to illustrate that, as an experiment, on an article I was writing about the North Dakota legislature, the Republican majority leaders were going to be having a press conference, and I had to sit and watch it so that I could know what I needed to write and know what they had said. But I just went to ChatGPT and I asked them, okay, generate an article, this word count, about this subject. And since it was just going to the internet and looking at what articles existed, it could only write about things that had happened in the past. It could only write an article about an event that didn't happen on the date it said it did. It said it took place in a different location, said it involved different individuals, because it wasn't actually observing the actual event like I was, because no one had written about it yet, because there's nothing in the whole of the hive mind for it to plug into. So I don't know. It still requires the human element, I guess,
Exactly.
is what I'm trying to get at. Because yeah, like my job still feels secure because as a hyper local newspaper in that sense, there isn't going to be an algorithm that can be finely tuned enough to get all the information that actually needs to be included in something so that it's pertinent. And in the same way, even in this broad sense, it's like, yeah, that nightmare scenario I pointed out where the director or the producer just sits there and just types in some, does Mad Libs and then gets a new script in 5 seconds. Like, that's unlikely to even, because eventually a human being's going to look at it and go, oh no, that makes no sense. Or, oh, that feels really wrong. Like, that's inevitably, like, where these things go. But larger than that, like, beyond just the AI concern, like, should there be more writers working in Hollywood? Or are the people who are representative of the WGA, like, should they just be better compensated? Like, what should be happening more? Like, should there be more elevation of people within that line of work, or do those people just deserve a bigger slice of the pie than they're getting?
I think that the people who are there now should probably just be compensated better, because as I said earlier, one of the things that the WGA is asking for is more writers on TV shows per episode count. And this is the one issue that I have personally with what they're asking for. This is the one time I would side with the giant corporations, in that I don't know if having a certain number of writers or a mandatory number of writers is conducive to the artistic medium, because some TV shows are the brainchild of one person and one person only, and they write everything. Some TV shows have a writer's room. Some TV shows have a duo of a creative team duo that writes everything. And so I don't know if just tacking on more people to the writer's room is necessarily, conducive to an artistic medium such as writing. So, I think, keep the people that are there now, pay them better. We don't need more.
Gotcha. So what's going to happen to the content that's coming down the pipe? Like, what's being delayed? What is actually going to be, have like a detrimental consequence of, either being made without the showrunners present, or being made, much later than expected?
Well, right now, and this is being updated daily. Like, I think I've seen every single day this week, a new show has said that they are being delayed, or a new movie. And it started with the variety programs and the talk shows, the late night talk shows. Those were shut down immediately because, those shows are written usually the day before or the day of. And so no more talk shows, no more SNL for the foreseeable future. Then in the last couple days or so, we've seen the more, scripted stuff, the more bigger stuff get delayed or canceled. The final season of Stranger Things got delayed yesterday. Marvel's Blade has now been delayed. Season 4, this is a really interesting one. Season 4 of the Paramount Plus show Evil.
Yeah.
It wrapped production early. They just chose to stop production because last night the WGA members were picketing the location that Evil was filming at, and they couldn't film anymore because the picketing was going on in the background. So they just said, all right, that's a wrap for this season. We'll edit around it, basically.
Yeah, and that's a direct result of the direct action efforts of the guild. Conover himself is in those picket lines. He's standing 8 to 10 hours a day because they all go in shifts, specifically because they know either you cause them to delay the time where the studios can make their money when it can be done. And sometimes it is just easier just to be okay, you're done, see you next year, see you when this is all over, because they're not just going to keep paying everybody. So there are consequences both ways, and they both can act like it's the other's fault that it's happening to a degree. But it's a deliberate you know, like it's interesting seeing these kinds of tactics being done in America, because like I know we've had some strikes recently. I know with like the rail people and whatnot, but this is the writers. This is, you know, the industry itself. So they can coordinate their activities a little better, you know. So we, you know what I mean? Like there's no one in the media who genuinely wants you to see what like a rail worker is trying to do, you know, in order to, you know, maintain their welfare and way of life. But it's the writers we're really, you know, concerned with, as you know. The writers' strike is still, you know, going on, week 2, and the hits are really starting to come. People are losing their cushy contracts. Shows are getting slowed down. People are getting called scabs. What is happening? Who is really hurting the most right now?
Yeah, well, I guess it's probably the shows that, you know, haven't quite finished writing yet and are currently in production, because what has happened this week is a couple more shows have been newly stalled out. We've got The Hedge Knight, Severance, Cobra Kai, Daredevil Born Again, and Billions. And what has happened with most of these is that they were in, you know, the writing stages, so there's really not much written, so they just had to shut it down. But in the case of Billions and Daredevil and Severance, these productions were actually shut down by picketers, by picketers going to the locations and picketing so loud that they just had to shut them down. And
wow.
So
Adam Conover, he's winning.
Yeah, it's extremely coordinated, and yeah, very, very sort of impressive that they can shut down these big productions. And yeah, I think we're going to be seeing probably more of this in the weeks ahead as long as this goes on. And yeah, I guess we'll kind of see what happens there. But yeah, in addition to these shows getting newly stalled out, a couple other happenings have happened. And the first thing was, you know, shortly after our episode last Monday, there was the MTV Movie Awards, which the host Drew Barrymore dropped out of a week before they happened. And I don't know if you saw any clips from this, but
I did not.
Oh my God, it was a mess. Like, just, I of course, I didn't watch it. I have no interest in these at all, but I did watch a couple clips, and essentially they canceled the live event because the picketers were planning on picketing the event had it happened.
And who was going to write the jokes?
Yeah, there's no jokes, there's no, you know, a lot of people probably wouldn't have even shown up sort of in solidarity with the writers. And so what this show was reduced to was a like lame ass clip show where they showed clips from past years, like, hey, remember when this happened? And then a bunch of like pre-taped segments. Like they showed Drew Barrymore's initial like sketch that opened the show, but then Drew Barrymore had no like presence for the rest of the night. So it was just really, it felt very random.
You mean there wasn't like some rerun of like an old school Jersey Shore season they could have ran during that block instead? Like, why even do this? It's also pointless. Like, who wants to watch that, let alone make it?
Yeah, it was awful. They probably would have gotten better ratings by doing a rerun of Jersey Shore too.
For real though.
And all the they did the acceptance speeches for the awards, but they were all pre-taped and they were all clearly filmed in like the actors and actresses' backyards, where they quickly set up like a, you know, their phone camera, and it just was very low production.
And do you think that they squeezed those in before the strike really hit?
I think that they were just very last minute.
Very last minute.
The actors, they really have no, there's nothing barring them from filming a acceptance speech, you know, unless their jokes were like pre-written or something like that. But yeah, it was awful. I would encourage anyone to go look at clips online of this, because it just was a train wreck. And speaking of train wrecks, Tony Gilroy got in a little bit of hot water this week because he continued production on Andor, but actually shut it down because he got a lot of flack. And I think him continuing production on that show sort of stemmed from a email that got circulated that was sent out to a lot of showrunners this past week that basically said, like, I think Disney and Paramount were the two companies that sent these out, and they were very similarly worded emails that basically said, hey, showrunners, you need to come back into work even though you can't write, and we're going to put you to work doing bitch jobs for the week, and if you don't come in, we're going to fucking fire you, basically. That's what it's not that he was actually working on Andor. It was that they were like having him file paperwork and like get people coffee. Were they really making them just do possibly?
That is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's incredibly degrading, and yeah, like they could, I suppose, do other stuff, as production, more like production type stuff, casting type stuff, basically anything that's not writing or rewriting.
Administrative work, basically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yikes. Yeah. Oh, I'm just gonna dump some footage, and then watch the dailies or something. Oy vey, that is really over the top, but. See, but then like, yeah, when you the extension of that though is like, yeah, if you're not actively in production, are you doing anything with your overall deal? Like, or are you standing in solidarity with the writers, or are you just being quiet? Depending on how you're behaving, it doesn't really matter, because it seems like everyone's kind of getting cut just as a cost saving measure. It's Zaslav economics. It's his like voodoo economics for the industry now, is to just cut all this dead weight. Because yeah, Ava DuVernay, you're there, we're paying you millions of dollars a year, and what the fuck are you making?
Yeah, no, that's an extension of what we were talking about. DuVernay, I guess I didn't hear about that. What's the story with her?
Her overall deal is just done. They've released her from it. Okay. They like bought her out essentially, so that they could get her off the books. And because it's unlike David Simon, another Warner, because she was also in a Warner Brothers deal. And but because apparently with him, it's just because he's such a shitlord on Twitter and was just going hard in the paint for the WGA and was like actively involved in their efforts and stuff. So they were just kind of like, yeah, from his point of view, it's because of his union action. But from their point of view, it's just a cost saving measure, because yeah, like, God, what was that fucking Baltimore show he just fucking put out that I've already forgotten the name of? We Own This City, right? Yeah, like that was a long ass wait for something that was pretty limp-dicked ultimately. And yeah, I don't know, that's just my impression of the man, so I'm not too shocked. But from the sounds of it, it doesn't matter if you're a big name or not. Like, if they just have you on staff so they can, plug you into the holes of any writer's room in their stable of shows, you also are getting cut loose. It's like almost like a firing squad sort of, situation when you get down to it. Like, it's kind of weird. What is happening to this industry? Are we really, like, what does this tell us about the long-term effects going forward? Are we going to see deals like this anymore?
I guess I don't know, because it's just what the WGA claims the studios are trying to do is basically turn the industry into like a gig economy where everything is going to be, writers are basically going to be like Uber drivers, where everything's contract based, and you're not the employee of any company ever, and you come on, you sign on to do a show, and then you're immediately out the door. It's just like the video game industry works, where people go and you work at a video game studio for 4 years making a video game, and then the second the game ships, they just lay off their entire squad and hire anew, so that they can hire people for cheap, and you don't have to give anybody raises. You don't have to extend any sort of loyalty to people who have been working there for a decade or 2 decades. They're trying to do it all on the cheap.
Yeah, yikes. that really kind of drives it, home, doesn't it? Oh yeah, and you're all working from home anyway. Like that's also probably part of it. Because if you're not actually on set and you're all just in a Zoom call, like the last movie to win Best Picture literally has a few frames that are of a Zoom call of them during the pandemic making the movie, which is one of like I don't know, but that says a lot about where the industry is at even. So yeah, it is just it's gonna get more dystopian, more cyberpunk, and they are gonna be it's so crazy because the whole point of these organizations is to create some sort of guarantee for its members that they'll be able to thrive, survive, or at the very least subsist. And it's getting harder and harder to do any of those three. So like, what is the point of being a member of these organizations anyway? That you might as well be freelance and command as much as you can for the value of your work as you can individually, because what's the point of the collective?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's, part of the reason why, I mean, I really do hope that the writers do get somewhere. I think if they can hold out long enough, they will, just like last time.
Yeah.
Because I think, this is like if the companies win on this, it's like a lose situation for everybody but them. But these, so I'm rooting for the writers. I hope that they get somewhere, and we will continue to report on this probably weekly until something resolves.
Because that is the thing. You're absolutely right. The little guys need to win here. Otherwise, we are just doomed to, algorithmically generated horrors, that like have no human involvement apart from people having their, like biometric data scanned by a computer so it can be, replicated digitally. We don't need that. Like we need the actual human element, and the actual humans involved are crying out. So hopefully they are heard. And I really don't like, I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, oh, all this stuff is grinding to a halt. We have nothing on late night television. Like nothing of value has been lost, because that's kind of what's getting in the way of, all of this is, oh, we just have to keep this thing, going. It's too big to fail. These things need to break down every once in a while for the right reasons. And it's going to be fascinating to see where it winds up.